Let's now look at some conditional statements, and in this particular case, I'm going to look at A and B. We're going to look at if statements, else statements, while statements, else if statements. For our simple example now, we're going to use if A is less than B. So I simply type in if A less than B, and now let's look at where A and B have been defined. If I go up in the code, A was used in the nmap, so I need to define it again. So let me go just above B, and let's call A equals 1. Sorry, A should be 1, B is 1.2. Now let's do some definitions. I need to put a colon here, which then allows me to enter the next line with the indentation. I want to print, and this is what I want to print: A is less than B. So if A is less than B, print this. And to see the other condition, I type in else, because if B is greater than A, I need to print B is greater than A. Let me just make sure that is correct. It's actually not right. I need to type in B is less than A. Sorry for the confusion, just trying to work through the logic myself. So let's now look at whether the calculation is correct. Run the program, and we see A is less than B because A is equal to 1. If I change the value of A, let's make A 1.4, and we run the program this time, we should get a different answer where B is less than A. Another handy feature using something like PyCharm is that when I make changes to the code is automatically saved. So I don't need to then have to save the file again. Other handy feature is if you go to the top section where it says run, I can run the program while within PyCharm. So if I hit the run button, you'll notice at the bottom it'll ask me which program. I select hello, which is the name of our current file, and when I do that, the bottom section shows up the output as we would have had in our Linux environment that we've been testing. So it's another handy feature that you don't need to keep going back to Linux or your environment like PC or Mac to test the code when you can do it right here. We can also run the code with this play button on the left hand side, and that will do the same as testing the application from within PyCharm. Now let's look at what we can do in this if statement by adding a command called else if. So after it says print A is less than B, let's type in else if, and else if is written as ELIF in Python, and the condition now should state if A is less than B, print A is less than B. Else if A equals B, then we want to print A is equal to B. I'll fix up the syntax in a second, but print A is equal to B. Let me go up and change the value of A to 1.2 to make this consistent with them being equal. And I need to put a colon here after else if. And what I've forgotten to do is the A equals B needs to be next to else if. So let's go to the next line and change that. Else if A equals B colon, and what I really need to do is this equals sign needs to be a double equals. So A equals B, then print A is equal to B. Now if I run the code in Kali Linux, let's make sure this actually works, and there we see A is equal to B. This is how we use the code in Python. You need the double equals to sign, and the else if is written as ELIF. You want to make sure you use your colons and indentation properly, otherwise your code may not work and will throw an error. So in this case, we've got if A is less than B, do this. Else if A equals B, print A is equal to B, and if those two conditions are not met, then print B is less than A. There's other statements like less than, equal to, greater than equal to, and to use not equal to, we use the exclamation mark, and then we use the equals to command. So not equal to, exclamation mark, equals is the command for that particular expression. Let's look at another example where we type in if A is less than B and B is greater than C. So we use and B greater than C. And let's print the statement on the screen, hurrah. So if A is less than B and B is greater than C, colon, print, and we're going to type in print hurrah to make sure that A is less than B and B is greater than C only under those two conditions. So let's look at what the value of A is and what the value of B and C is. A is 1.2. So let's make A less than B, and we want B to be less than C. So let's, C less than B, so B is greater than C. Now let's double check the output for that. 1.1, 1.4, and 1.3 for the three values. And you see it prints hurrah here. This is how we test for a double condition in an if statement. If I change and to or, and we need to then modify the values, but now it will test for if one of the conditions is true. So let's go and make C greater or B less than C. If B is less than C, the condition on the right is not met, but it still should print hurrah. So when we run this, notice that hurrah appears here. If I again change this to say if A is less than B and B is greater than C, in this case both conditions have to be true. If I click the play button, nothing is displayed because one of the conditions is false. So in this way we are able to use if statements, else if statements, and the else statement. By now you should be familiar with how to use some basic Python expressions. We've looked at how to define integer values, we've looked at how to define strings, we've looked at how to define path names, we've looked at if, we've looked at else if, we've looked at else, we've been able to look at Boolean values, we've looked at string length in a previous video, we've looked at how to compare different values, we've looked at how to add, subtract, multiply, we've been able to print things to a screen. So by now you should have a basic grasp of Python. What I also want to show you in this video is the while loop. Now to do that, basically what we want to do is say if a certain number is this while the program is running, do a certain task. So let's define x equals 1 in this example. And while x equals 1, we then want to print something to the screen, which is print the value of x. So x equals 1. I need to put a colon there, so I'll fix that up in a second. Print x onto the screen. Now let me go and make sure this code is correct. What I'm going to do here though is let x equal 10. And while x equals, I'll do the less than equals 10. So while x, let me just play this. Let me change this to x equals 1. Let's keep it simple. While x equals 1, or x equals to 1, while x is less than or equal to 10, print x. And now we need to increment x after it prints. So x equals x plus 1. So it increments by 1 each time. So it should print 1 through to 10 and not print anything after that, because the while loop will be false at that point. As you can see here, it's printed 1 up to 10. So x equals 1, while x less than equal to 10, print x and then increment x. And this is how we use the while loop. Very interesting and very useful in code, and we'll see how to use these functions in more detail in some future videos. But just get a handle on how we've defined x and then we've incremented it, and while x is less than equal to 10, it prints x.